All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Personnel Committee. Is there any courtesy of the floor? Hearing and seeing none. We'll move into a review of the county executive appointments and reappointments. First is the Conservation District Board, Richard DeFebo from Bangor, Pennsylvania, being considered for a 4-year term to begin January 20th, 2023. Should that be? It says 2022 on here. Should it be 3?
December 20.
Pardon?
Yes.
Is the term to begin January 20th, 2022 or 2023? Mr. DeFebo.
It's 2023.
Thank you. And then December 31st, 2027, he was nominated by the Northampton Monroe Farm Bureau for an appointment to this board.
Move forward.
Thank you.
Same thing.
Same thing on the next one, Joel Geiger, Danielsville, Pennsylvania, need to change that to December 31st, December 21st, 31st, 2022, and end December 31st, 2026. Nominated by Northampton Lehigh Carbon Monroe Farm Service Agency for the reappointment to this board.
Move forward.
Thank you. Next, we have for the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board, an appointment for Jordan Westerman from Bath, Pennsylvania. Ms. Westerman is considered for a 2-year term to begin January 20th, 2023 to end June 30th, 2025.
Move forward.
Thank you. Jail Advisory Board, Christopher Hess,
Yes.
Easton, Pennsylvania. Mr. Hess is being considered for a 2-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and to end December 31st, 2024.
Move forward.
Thank you. Next, we have for the a recommendation for appointment to the Airport Authority, Ms. Ann Baum, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, considered for a 5-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and to end December 31st, 2028. Thank you. Next is a reappointment to the Airport Authority, Glenn Riebman, being considered for a 5-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and end December 31st, 2028.
Really? Yeah, okay, move forward.
Another reappointment to the Atlanta Transportation Authority, Iris Linares, being considered for a 5-year term to begin April 1st, 2023, and end March 31st, 2028.
Move.
Thank you. Recommendation for appointment to council liaison for the Lehigh Valley Commission Board, Tara Zarinsky, 1-year term, 20th, 2023, January to end December 31st, 2023. Did you make this appointment?
No. This is Mr. McClure's appointment.
Well, it's your appointment.
She's the council liaison. You approved her.
I already approved that when we did that. I already approved it.
So your motion to move
Yep.
forward?
It's a motion to move it. I had moved it.
Thank you. Recommendation for the appointment to the Mental Health Early Intervention and Developmental Programs Advisory Board, Donna Thorman, Nazareth, Pennsylvania, considered for a 3-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and to end January 23rd, 2026. Thank you. Recommendation for reappointment to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Advisory Board, Paul Ricciardi, Bethlehem, PA, being considered for a 2-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and to end March 19th, 2025.
Move.
Thank you. A reappointment to the same board for Clyde Thomas, considered for a 2-year term to begin January 20th, 2023, and March 19th, 2025.
Please move.
Thank you. Next, we have a review of a personnel request from the District Attorney's Office. Upgrade 1 full-time clerical position. And Mr. Hauk is here to discuss this with us.
Yes, thank you. I'm not asking for a new employee, I'm just asking for an upgrade of one full-time clerical tech position to a full-time clerical specialist position. The reason for that is the duties of that specific position has increased to include docketing of paperwork, going to juvenile court, juvenile files, sending juvenile discovery, filing docket, just to name a few. Their responsibilities have increased and would be commensurate with this upgraded position.
This is the only one you have, or you have others?
No, I have a number of clerical,
But you
I'm
feel
sorry.
need to update this because you're getting more and more juvenile things that you need help with?
well, yeah, I mean, with the addition of our videos, things of that nature, we have to spread the business around a little bit. So we have a number of clerical specialists. In fact, most of the women down there are clerical specialists. And this is commensurate with what they do, which is why I'm asking for this upgrade.
Just one question, are you losing anybody with this move?
Losing anybody?
Yeah.
There's somebody yes, there's somebody that left under the clerical tech position. And when we hire somebody in that position now, it'll be upgraded to the new position.
Okay, I was
So,
going to
yeah.
ask, you're going to fill that position?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no question.
Someone's on the phone?
I am.
Tara?
It's Tara. Yeah, I'm on the phone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just listening. Thanks.
I don't have any.
Okay, move
Moving
forward.
forward?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And unless there's anything else from the committee, we can adjourn this.
Second?
Thank you. We are done.
That was quick. Ron's here, I just saw him. Yeah, we'll give Ron a minute, then.
Do we want to do the first inning stretch?
I'm going to have cold drop because my throat's a little rusty. At that point, if he's not here, I'll start and he can take over. Oh, for this one.
John Brown and, John Cooper from Newark.
Something worked out downstairs. All right, I guess we'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. First, we have courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone who would like to address Finance Committee? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the agenda. And the first item is update from Lehigh County Airport Authority. And we have representatives. Tom, if you'd just identify yourself for the.
Certainly. Well, good evening, County Council members. My name is Tom Stout, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. My pleasure to be here this evening, give you a little update. This is something we typically get in front of the group and discuss in November, December timeframe, but I know we wanted to try to recover after the holiday and get back in here to do this meeting. With me this evening, I also want to thank Todd Kwan, our Director of Finance, for being here, and Colin Riccobon, our Director of Government Relations. So thank you, gentlemen, both. So just a few slides, and happy to answer any questions along the way. First off, again, I'd like to just start off with the highlights here. Again, still the fourth largest airport in the Commonwealth. We have 4 commercial airlines at ABE, and continue to have 2 general aviation airport facilities, one in Lehigh County and one in Forks Township in Northampton County. Nice little picture, if you haven't been to the airport recently, of some of the new signage welcoming you to the facility. So we've received a number of compliments about the new signs. Wanted to share those with you as well. We just released our traffic counts for December, which rounds out the 22 calendar year. And you can see, so you'll read about this probably a little bit in some of our blogs and on our website, but our traffic is back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's actually a rarity right now in the industry, that we've recovered back to 2019 as kind of the last benchmark year for pre-pandemic travel. So a little north of that number, but we're excited to be back in terms of that traffic. And as I mentioned, you can sort of see this might be a little bit of an eye test, so I apologize, but this is really a comparison of our airport to some of our peer airports. Similar size, similar levels of service, typically East Coast facilities. And you can see how we're still down a little bit on throughput when you look at what's happening at the checkpoint level. Even though our traffic is up, the throughput sometimes doesn't match that. So when we kind of look at a calendar year, it's a little bit deceiving when the throughput is different. But what you can clearly see is what's happening in places like Harrisburg and Wilkes-Barre, where their throughput is down 20 to 30%, and that's more typical of what we're seeing for other airports. So again, we're really excited to be back at the levels we are.
Can you define what throughput is? That's
I'm sorry,
a new
yes,
word for
absolutely.
me.
So I apologize in advance if I do that. Aviation is filled with terminology and acronyms that I use so often, sometimes I forget, I need to explain those. TSA throughput, we're really just talking about the individuals moving through the checkpoint. Now those counts include passengers, but they also include flight crew members and some of the staff there as well, who also get screened. So that's really what they're looking at in terms of throughput through the actual TSA screening process. So sometimes that's why the passenger counts and the throughput counts don't actually equate.
And just as a follow-up, the real ID thing, where are we with that?
I actually have a slide here,
Okay.
if that's
All right.
okay. We'll talk about
There's
that.
always one person that,
No.
never mind.
So again, we're happy to be back to those traffic levels. Some of the stuff that made news, I think, last year was the fact that American Airlines, we've had United Airlines service to Newark via a bus for quite a while, for a number of years, over a decade. What's new, though, is for American and United, they're both using a company, Landline, and Landline is, as you can see, the buses are branded, and these are more of a motor coach than the typical buses we've seen, so it's really an upgrade in terms of the process. We're excited to have that service back. We actually lost the Philadelphia service, the air service, during the pandemic, and economically, American couldn't bring it back. And this was a way to reconnect us to that Philadelphia hub, which a lot of our business travelers, and we have, and actually the Aero Club, which is a lot of our frequent flyers, had asked us about this very option, knowing that we had bus service from ABE to Newark. Could we not restore the service through bus service? And here we were able to connect on this. So we think this is a great add for the community, and certainly we've had a lot of positive feedback on that service again in the connection to Philadelphia.
So where's Landline coming out of?
The actual bus depot, I'm not certain. They are actually serving not just ABE in Philadelphia, but they also provide service at Lancaster, at Atlantic City, in the region. They also have an operation out in Denver. So in terms of where their local bus depot is, I'm not certain.
So they probably contracted with somebody else. How often are we running that bus down to Philadelphia?
So it's twice that they're running a day. So on 2 arrivals, 2 departures, if you will. We're still calling them arrivals and departures.
Absolutely.
And United is still running 3 trips a day, 3 arrivals, 3 departures per day to Newark. And we're still looking at other destinations, and these are destinations you've seen before, I'm sure, as we've been here talking about Boston, Denver, Dallas, and that the one, it's, again, we're putting these alphabetically, not necessarily order of priority, but San Juan is on there, and we've talked about this one for a while. We had a really popular response when we did a survey about San Juan service a year or so ago, and we continue to look for the right airline partner here to make that connection, and we're still working on that. That's a work in progress, and that's really because we're still working with carriers as they're recovering from the pandemic. And as we take a look at what that industry looks like, we know that their resources are certainly constrained. They don't have the aircraft they need, and they don't have the flight crew members that they need. The other side to that, though, is airfares are up, and that's because demand has been hot. And you see that with our traffic numbers, you see that with what's happening. There's still a lot of demand and limited resources. So certainly that plays into when we're talking about new destinations. It certainly makes the challenging conversation when we don't have the resources for the carriers to provide, additional routes. So 2023, from everything we've received from conferences and other discussions with the carriers, is really going to be a pretty steady year in terms of air service development. So we're happy to have the service we have and continue to do that, but there's still some irons in the fire that we'll continue to pursue, but probably no major announcements for 2023 based on what we're understanding.
Question during the Christmas holiday and the cancellations, like what was ours like at Allentown?
Well, fortunately, we really weren't subject to the Southwest debacle that we read about. We did have a few cancellations and trickle effect from other cancellations and issues throughout the system. So, for example, we just saw that the notice to air mission system from the FAA went down, and that affected service pretty recently nationally. So those types of interruptions, we joke that we actually were able to get probably one of the only airports in the country to get air passengers out that day because we have bus service, but they ended up going to Philly or Newark and probably not too much further. So again, I'm sure they appreciated that. So again, I think, to your question though, Mr. Myers, the idea was that it was a limited impact during the holidays on us. We did have a few weather events, that cold snap I know, and some of those things ended up causing some delays, but really in the way of cancellations, it was extremely minimal for us, and that was fortunate.
That's great news to hear.
So just shifting gears over to air cargo. Again, the last 3 years, you could see our cargo numbers continuing in terms of the pounds of air cargo moving through facility, continuing to grow. There's not a lot of room left at the end when we look at the cargo apron and how many aircraft are there. It has become challenging, but again, a good problem to have. That certainly, again, a lot of growth in that sector, and that continues to move a lot of vital materials and supplies in and out of our communities. So again, continue to grow in that area. The project that is grabbing most of our attention these days is our construction of a new TSA checkpoint, and broke ground in that in May of 2021. And again, a $35 million construction project. And I really have to thank our board members who really were supportive of getting this project started when we only had $3.5 million of grant funding in hand. And we now have over $18 million of grant funding, federal and state. So we're excited to bring this project to fruition. We're very pleased to have the support of the county. County Executive McClure and visible here under mask outside, helping us break ground at this one. But certainly the support of the community, the counties has been very appreciated as we move into this project. And we're happy to say that it's coming along. And we're still on target for June, as we've talked about, 2-year construction project, still looking at the June date. So we're excited, almost 3/4 of the way through this project. And yes, there have been supply chain challenges like on every project, but the team has done an incredible job overcoming some of those challenges and really bringing this, keeping it on budget and on schedule. In terms of Braden Airpark, the new terminal building, if you haven't driven past there recently, it's open and operating. Significant upgrade from the facility that we had there previously. Again, 50-50 grant match with PennDOT Bureau of Aviation that we were able to bring this modular facility in place. And in addition to all of the office space it provides us, it also does a wonderful job of providing meetings for our local Boy Scout troops and some of the other community organizations, and we're happy to be able to offer the facility for that as well. In November, we did pass our operating budget, so we did approve our budget. We have a balanced budget, and Just a little snapshot here to show you where revenues are derived. And again, no surprise, airlines. And I know Todd always likes to remind me about parking. So parking is also another big generator for us. So again, a good year, 2022, when we look at how that year closed out, a very positive year. We're still utilizing the CARES, Sarissa, and ARPA funds. Some of that funding is still important for us to stay balanced. And in the 2023 budget, we're showing net revenue of about 2.1 million, and that includes 4.1 of CARES and ARPA funds. So we're still working on building back to self-sustainability, and that's obviously a process as we continue to recover. So that's the state of the budget.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
budget question there?
Sure.
I believe it was back in 2020 you came to us for some refinancing. Could you maybe talk about that and how that worked out?
Yeah, and I certainly would ask Todd as well if you had anything to offer on this. But yeah, in terms of that reissue, that worked out very well, essentially deferring our debt payments, and that really bought us time. That really bought us some time during the pandemic. And again, when we came before you, this was prior to CARES, Sarissa, ARPA funding that we didn't really know was coming, or the timing of that. And obviously there were a number, over 24 cost-cutting measures that we put in place. And this was certainly one of them that was important to us, that really did defer our debt service payments. So Todd, I don't know if you wanted to answer anything else about that.
So I think Tom kind of summarized it pretty well. What we tried to do before a lot of the support came that was known, we tried to kind of manage it ourselves with some of our cost-cutting measures. And one of the things was to kind of manage our cash. And we deferred some of our debt service that we had. So we went from about 4 million, I think we paid about 1.6 million in 2020, and that's deferred. We paid the first million last year, actually 1/1 of this year. We paid that debt service, so we had time to recover. And the last one is in 2029, I believe. So it gave us time to kind of recover and catch our breath. So that was the main reason. It just kind of pushed that debt service back down the road to give us kind of some breathing room at the time as far as cash flow.
But it's not a problem handling it now at all then?
Well, we've already handled 1 million of it already that we handled last year. So we handled, that was the first one, which is the one we were most concerned about because that was so quick. But we handled that, and the other one's a lot further down the road. And actually what's happening now is our debt service, because we've been able to handle that $1 million of extra that we had to pay last year, it kind of rolls right into what we're going to have to pay with the connector. So it kind of says our ability to pay is kind of pretty steady along the way, which is kind of what we had talked about all along.
All right, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Todd, appreciate that. Non-aeronautical development. So in addition to aeronautical development, like new TSA checkpoint, we're also exploring non-aeronautical development. Back in 2021, we did sign an agreement with Majestic Realty to look at a compatible development. And this really provides an opportunity for a long-term income for the airport. So this is really taking a look at land that, again, was zoned to be compatible with airport development and continuing to match that zoning and develop this property into revenue-producing assets that will really help provide some additional income to the airport. And this is over almost a 50-year period if all of the agreement and lease extensions would be provided by the authority. So again, nothing that it's really generating differently for us today, but certainly in terms of the long range or strategic look, this is something that will provide some definite revenue for us over time. And we think that's also important for airports as we look across the country and certainly look at our own aviation system here. Another program we rolled out this year, when I say this year, 2022, was the Sunflower Lanyard program. And a number of airports introduced this program. And we actually have a number of programs between our Wings for All, some of the other events that we do, focusing on individuals with disabilities who use our facilities. But this was one that was really interesting to us with hidden or non-visible disabilities. And we have some of those different conditions listed there. But we employed the services of the ARC to come in and do some training for our staff. And really the way the program works is folks who come into the airport can stop at the desk, at our information desk on the lower level, get a lanyard, and they wear that lanyard, and they don't have to identify themselves in any other way. But when our folks see the lanyards, when TSA or other personnel in the airport see those lanyards, they'll be able to approach that person and, based on the training with the ARC, be able to give them additional assistance if needed. And it really, again, just adds to the number of programs that we have to provide a high level of customer service than what you might find at some other commercial airport facilities. So we're really proud to bring this program to the airport as well. Real ID. As requested, our Department of Homeland Security did kick the can again a little bit here down into 2025. So you've got a lot more time to work on getting your real ID if you want to do that. Again, you don't have to use a driver's license, real ID driver's license to fly domestically, but you would need a real ID compliant document, meaning a passport card, a military ID card, something that does meet the real ID standards. And you can find out more information on our website about that, but certainly the driver's license might be the easy one to know you're carrying with you. I always say, think about if you're going to really remember to grab your passport or passport card when you're grabbing the American bus to Philly. So you might have the driver's license in your wallet, though, so that's probably a safe bet. And with that, I think that concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
Are there any other questions?
The one thing you didn't really touch on is private aviation. How are the hangar rentals, and how's that being handled post-COVID, et cetera?
Yeah, so flight training is continuing to be popular. Certainly, you may have seen some of what the airlines are doing, creating their own flight academies and training programs again. So that spurred a renewed interest in that. I know we lost some interest in flying during the pandemic and flight training. That's come back. The general aviation activity, is a little bit more difficult to count because we're looking at, we don't have a tower at those facilities to know how many takeoffs and landings we have. But when we kind of look at fuel sales and some other metrics there, we can see that activity is coming back. And actually, the corporate activity was doing pretty well during the pandemic as certain folks were deciding to not fly commercial. So we were seeing some of that as well. So the general aviation side is continuing to recover, just like we're seeing that recovery. That might take a little bit more time, I think, but I think certainly what's happening with the pilot shortages, that's certainly been a boost. We're still interested in seeing what happens in other sectors of aviation jobs and, aircraft mechanics and those types of positions as well, and how we can engage the community with those types of positions.
Yeah, and since you raised the issue, what about staffing? How are you doing there?
So staffing, probably like everywhere, is continuing to be a little bit of a challenge. We've made a lot of progress over the last year in terms of some of our staff shortages, and we've really been able to do a lot. We've had some new collective bargaining agreements, and that's really gone a long way to adjusting some wage rates and doing things that needed to be adjusted with the change in the market. And that's helped fill a lot of those positions that we were having some challenge with. At this point, most departments are fully staffed and are back to normal staffing levels, but we continue to have some vacancies, and that's been traditional over my years at the facility. Is there's always, with almost 300 employees there's always, some vacancies.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to apply for a job, how would they do that?
Excellent. So thanks for the plug. They can go to flyabe.com. We have all of our information online. You can easily find employment opportunities, job postings, even some videos that help people understand some of the different jobs that are at the airport and at our aviation system, because they're not your typical job titles in all cases. So I think there's a wealth of information for folks that might have an interest there, and we would certainly encourage that. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Tom, could you just touch on the TSA in the sense of the program where people can go ahead of time
Certainly. So we're talking about the TSA
Just for public information.
pre-check process. So if you're not familiar, with TSA pre-check, it's an opportunity to get cleared ahead of time. The clearance is good for 5 years. It used to be $85, Colin. I think it's now $78. So they actually reduced the cost of the program at $78, and it's good for 5 years. But it essentially does a pre-background on you, and once you've done that process, now you can get a different level of screening. It's more of an expedited screening because you've been pre-cleared. So typically it means you can leave your shoes on, your belt on, all those types of things when you travel and you're heading through the checkpoint. So we have a number of events from over the years and a couple a year. Colin, our next event is?
We actually have 3 coming up in 2023. The first one will be in April, the first week of April, July, and October. So more information will come out.
So we will have an opportunity, if you're interested in those, again, you can go on our website and find more information, but we do have an opportunity to register right at ABE. We'll have a pop-up event there, and folks can bring your documents, and it's a pretty quick process. Get yourself registered, and you're good for 5 years. You can get the new express lane, if you will, at the ABE checkpoint in June,
So if someone doesn't make the event, they just go to the airport and they can register at the airport now.
The other option is there is a TSA pre-check enrollment center not far from the airport. And so that's another opportunity. We have a lot more engagement when we host these pop-up events than they do across the street when they normally have their open office hours. So it seems like when we put the word out about a special event, it helps draw people in to register. And ultimately that's helpful for the traveler and for TSA for a lot of things. I know TSA is always interested in getting more folks enrolled.
I think we've registered over 11,000 since we started doing it.
Just from our events.
15, 16. And this year's event, as scheduled now, will be So we've had nearly 11,000 people register for TSA PreCheck at events that we've had at the airport since 2015. This year's event right now is scheduled to be an RV, so they've actually made it a lot easier for individuals where they can just pull into the parking lot, go into the RV. It's a very quick process, and you're in, you're out, and registered. So they really want to see more and more people use TSA PreCheck. With the arrival of the new checkpoint and having a TSA PreCheck lane, it's certainly going to make the customer experience even faster. So more information, Tom mentioned the website. Social media will obviously have those instructions and registration instructions as well.
Thanks. Any other questions for any of the individuals? If not, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of the support and really appreciate the opportunity to give you the update. Thank you, Executive McClure, for all your support on everything we're doing at the airport system. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up we have controller reports, and I see the controller is sitting out there. What I'll do, Mrs. Borski, is we'll just start with conservation, and when any questions are finished, you can just move on to the next one.
Okay. Let me get my notes together here. All right. We have audited the statement of revenues, expenditures of the Conservation District of the County of Northampton. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly and in all material respects the revenues and expenditures of the Conservation District in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. However, we did note control deficiencies and other management issues. The first one was in our testing of receipts, we noted that 5 deposits were entered in the wrong org number in one solution. The district's fiscal policies and procedures require that the district manager use a log of receipts to verify the deposit being made. We noted that the manager maintains a log for receipts, and the log of receipts was correct, but the daily cash summary sheets were in error, and the errors were not caught prior to entry into the one solution system. Deposits include grants received by the district with different restrictions. Deposits should be coded to the correct org to ensure that they're used accordingly are used according to restrictions. It will also ensure the correct balances at year end. It should be noted that we we properly reclassified these entries for presentation in the financial system, including in this report. Management's response was the manager said he read the observations and acknowledges the role in the deficiency. Manager will meet with the office staff to prepare daily cash summary sheets to review the district fiscal policies and procedures for deposits. The second observation on audit, we selected 13 deposits for review and noted that 7 of them were deposited 10 days or later from the date of receipt. In one instance, the deposit was made 21 days after the date of receipt. State regulations indicate that deposits should be made no later than 10 calendar days from the date of receipt, and the district financial policies and procedures state that deposits should be made approximately 1 week. Delays in depositing receipts increase the risk of misappropriation or misplacement of funds. The director, Conservation District Manager, has read the observation and acknowledges the deficiencies. The manager will make every effort to ensure that deposits are made weekly at a minimum of no more than 10 days. That includes the Conservation District.
Any questions? Go ahead.
The next one is a financial audit of District Magistrate John Capabianco. We have audited the company of statements of changes in assets and liabilities, cash basis of the County of Northampton for District Magistrate District DMC 03-208. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to present fairly in all material aspects the statement of changes in assets and liabilities, cash basis as of December 31st, 2020 and December 31st, 2021, in accordance with the cash basis of accounting. As part of obtaining reasonable assurances about whether the MDC's financial statements are free of material misstatements, we performed tests of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements, non-compliance with which could have a direct material effect of the determination of financial statements. The result of our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards.
Anything? Go ahead.
The next one was the fuel card program. We have completed an audit of the county's fuel card program as of July 2022. The county's fuel card program continues to be an efficient and economic method of purchasing fuel for county-owned vehicles. Drivers use a special credit card, fuel cards, that are accepted at almost all fuel stations nationwide. Fuel card purchases are exempt from federal and state fuel taxes. The county chose the WEX, W-E-X, Sunoco fleet card for their fuel card program. WEX was selected through a state contract, and the procurement division manages the fuel card program. Fuel for all county-owned vehicles is purchased using the WEX card. Like other payment methods used by the county, internal controls are in place, both those built in by the program by the vendor and those established by the county personnel. Our audit evaluated those controls and found that for the most part they are working well. However, strengthening those controls would be beneficial. We did not identify any instances of fraud or abuse, although we did identify some wasteful practices. The best time to evaluate the question transaction is monthly as they occur rather than at a time in the future. Finally, during the audit, we recommended updating and expanding the fuel card instructions into more of a policy and procedure manual to provide better directions for employees. We conducted this performance audit in accordance with generally accepted government accounting standards.
Questions?
Okay, the next one, we have 2 agreed upon procedure reports for hotel room rental tax for the View Inn Suites and Wood Spring Suites. As I stated in other reports like this, our first procedure is to obtain 2 years of tax remittances from the county's revenue division, inspect to determine whether the operator used the latest forms of the remittance form, and that the form was fully completed and in a proper and accurate manner. For the Wood Spring Suites, we inspected all remittance forms submitted during the audit period, and the operator did use the latest version of the remittance form, and they were completed in an accurate manner. However, the required exemption form was not included for the month of June 2020. Also, permanent and non-permanent residence exemptions were incorrectly reported on the same form for July 2020, August, and December 2021. The operator remitted the higher of the tax collected versus the tax due, and all calculations were accurate. All remittances were received in a timely manner. Second procedure is to interview hotel management to gain an understanding of the operator's accounting system. We obtained an understanding of the operator's accounting system sufficient to evaluate the accuracy of remittances to the county. The next procedure is to inspect the operator's financial reports to verify accuracy of remittance reports and compliance with rules and regulations. We did recalculate all remittance forms submitted during the period, inspected exemption documentation, and found that the operator over-reported revenue in 2020 and 2021 due to inclusion of the revenue non-taxable per county hotel tax. The next procedure is to investigate the validity of claims for permanent and non-permanent exemptions by testing a sample of not more than 50. We sampled 41 exemptions and found 6 were calculated incorrectly by the operator. 3 were disallowed for permanent residents where the operator did not properly refund the tax to the guest. When granting exemptions to guests, the hotel does not refund credit for the first 30 days of tax charged to permanent residents. They collect the tax every day. After 30 days of the same person, they become a permanent resident and they're supposed to get that money back. We found out in situations they have not refunded the money. We calculated any additional tax due or refund due to the operator, and we determined that the Wood Springs Suites does not owe Northampton County any additional money for hotel room rental tax. For the View Inn Suites, we inspected all remittance forms submitted, and the operator failed to complete tax collected line in July, September, and October of 2021. The operator failed to complete required exemption forms from July 2020 through June 2021. Also, the operator only used permanent resident exemption forms, however, most exemptions were non-permanent. The operator filed remittance forms late in February 2020 and November 2020, and the county assessed a late fee in February 2020. We obtained an understanding of the operator's accounting process sufficient to evaluate the accuracy of remittances to the county. We recalculated all remittance forms submitted during the period and found the operator underreported $6,765 in revenue in 2020 due to invalid exemption claims. The operator underreported $26,193.50 in revenue in 2021 due to invalid exemption claims. In reviewing the revenue reporting provided by the operator, we noted untaxed revenue totals of $9,196.64 for 2020 and $36,332.35 for 2021, which was classified as miscellaneous. The operator was unable to provide information as to what types of revenue were included in this category. Therefore, it is impossible for us to determine whether any of this revenue should have been subject to occupancy tax. We reviewed all exemptions and found that only 2 permanent exemptions were valid. The remaining 32 non-permanent exemptions were deemed invalid due to the lack of supporting documentation. We determined that the View Inn Suites owes Northampton County $1,554.11 in hotel taxes. We conducted this agreement upon procedures engagement in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And the last one is,
Mr. Cruz.
oh,
I have
yes.
a question on this one.
Yes.
This one appears either to be just incompetence or complete lack of understanding of how the hotel tax requirements operate. Has this operator been educated, so to speak, as to the proper procedures?
We
as
have a
part of the
booklet that
remediation?
we have a booklet that we have done that we give it to them, which explains in detail what to do. So I don't think that's the problem. Sometimes I don't know if it's untrained staff or what it is. And this is done every 2 years, so I don't remember the last time I was here if we did one for this particular hotel.
Yeah, because this one doesn't sound like they particularly don't, either they don't know what they're doing or there's something else going on. So I think it,
Well, even their miscellaneous revenue, they don't break it down as to what it is, so you don't know if what could be. Is it itemized common fees for such as room damage, rollaway beds, pet fees, or smoking fees? All of which are subject to occupancy tax, but you can't tell because they have no breakdown of their miscellaneous revenue.
well, thank you.
Are you thinking we should send somebody Goodfellow style to educate them or something? Mr. Controller, do you, what is ultimately the recourse if this continues? I don't understand the law that well I mean, what's the ultimate outcome if this continues and they just continue to not follow what they're supposed to follow? I mean, I know you do the audits, but at some point, is there something that
If there are
goes
things
beyond
we can figure out, we charge them, and that's why they were charged $1,500.
Right.
If we catch it. If there are other things like this miscellaneous income, there was no way for us to determine what that was because they had no breakdown for it.
So I guess my question is, I mean, you're right. If you can find something, you charge them.
Yes, we do.
And they pay it, which maybe in their mind, it's easier than just doing
Work
everything along
themselves.
the line.
I think there's something like that.
But is there, and I don't know, and that's why I'm asking, and maybe this is for the county too. At some point, if somebody like this institution continues to not do what the law says, is it something that and you're charging, you're doing what you have to do. I just wonder, does this get referred somewhere, or is that just the way the nature of it is? If somebody says, if you find it, I'll pay it?
Well, the only thing I can suggest is this is an every 2-year audit, so we wait another 2 years and see what they do then.
All right. Yeah, thank you, because I was just curious. Dovetailing on Mr. Cusick's comment, I mean, it sounds like I don't know, they may not care one way or the other, but I could be wrong.
Well, some of them, I think they take the attitude, you charge me, we'll just pay it, instead of doing the work themselves.
Well, and that's happened in other areas, and I certain businesses, the fine is easier to deal with than the, all right.
The last one is an
go ahead.
audit follow-up for the Records Improvement and Automation Fund audit. It's the policy of our office, as required by government accounting standards, to follow up on audit report recommendations. This is the third follow-up we performed on the Records Improvement and Automation Fund asset issued March 17, 2021. The Records Improvement Committee has since reconvened, and in their second follow-up, the Director of Fiscal Affairs indicated that a new plan would be published by July 1st, 2022. The following is an update to determine the status of that plan. Stephen Barron, Director of Fiscal Affairs, reported the corrective action and new plan will be completed by January 31st, 2023. Since corrective action is in the process of being taken, additional follow-up will be performed to determine if the plan was completed and published.
Any questions? Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Controller?
That is it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So before we adjourn, is there anything anybody has for the committee or Mr. Kusick?
I just had a couple of points. These are things I've seen in news reports lately. One was regarding the Wilson Lerda. I believe Mr. Spadoni was referenced as part of that article as what the county's actions were. I can only speak for myself. I think what I would like to see was two things. A, for the taxes to be paid on the property and be brought up to date, and a LERTA that we all are familiar with be considered instead of the one that they passed, which was somewhat lopsidedly in favor of the developer. That was where I came down. So I don't know, Chris, did they contact you? It seemed to reference you in the article. I don't know.
John, they're going to talk about that at the Economic Development Committee meeting in February, just to let you know.
Okay, that's.
But Christopher can answer your question.
I saw the news blurb on FMZ, and they interviewed, I think related to that, they interviewed Mr. Reedman, and they talked about it and prominently mentioned that the county, we didn't go along with, with the plan, but they didn't really get into too much detail. It was sort of like a passing story.
Yeah, I voted for a lot of alertas, nothing like the one I saw them put forward, so that was another concern. And then the other issue, I saw an article about the city of Easton is having issues with the hydropower plant. And, as we know, some of us had concerns during budget time about the viability of that project, and now the city of Easton seems to be having some issues as well, so.
I believe it was, and I read the article, in their case, the Mayor Panto was upset that council, I mean, I could be wrong. I got the impression from reading the article that the mayor didn't understand why council wanted to continue Easton City Council. But I don't know, is there, did any of you from the administration get anything from him or? From Easton and communications. I mean, I don't know, honestly. I think they have a resolution they passed to keep it or to work on it, and the mayor wasn't sure if he wanted to do it. If somebody knows what they're talking about, I'd be happy to entertain.
So some of this is a negotiation over a lease, okay?
Okay.
And lawyers from New England Hydro and the city of Easton are talking. Folks have reached out to city council members, so I don't want to assume how the mayor feels about things with the new discussions. I know New England Hydro was going to reach out, and some members of council had questions for the administration and for New England Hydro. So we've been kind of going back and forth. I know they're going to get into an executive session. The issue is over leasing the land and the terms of the lease at Humor Park. Some of it is taken care of, or hopefully will be taken care of when the FERC permitting comes in. So we'll know sort of the lay of the land. And I do know that there was an issue with where the leased property was going to begin and end, at least initially, and I think that's going to be worked out. There were some other issues, and I think the lawyers are working out between New England Hydro and the city. So there's more to come.
So for the county, it's status quo.
Yes.
Where we
Yes, we were able to do the core drilling. We settled out all of the 2022 bills, and we haven't been billed anything in 2023. And I think the goal now is to get the lease agreement done before any of the product is purchased, before any of the other stuff happens. Construction contracts are inked and things like that. So you have to get a lease done at this point now. And I think that they know they did the core drilling based on a temporary lease. The city gave them a temporary lease. And that core drilling is going to be helpful for the park in general as well. So I think that's pretty good. Location, so New England Hydro has a design that's set on a specific location. However, that location can move based on the core drilling and how to secure the towpath, secure the canal, and to make sure that they follow all the FERC permitting with the silt that runs off or that will ultimately run off into the Lehigh River. One of the things that I think is attractive to the city of Easton, right now the city of Easton is responsible for the entire canal, all water flow, silt, and runoff into the Lehigh, as well as the maintenance, repair, and upkeep of the chain dam. And that can be very, very expensive. New England Hydro in their lease has offered $35,000 a year, just right up front into a sinking fund. And obviously if there's more, they need to be responsible for the water runoff that goes along that line. So the city would offload responsibility for the chain dam and the maintenance and flow in the canal, which is good for them. Plus, New England Hydro has agreed to take care of the canal boat for dry docking and stuff like that, which is very, very, very good because right now the canal level, if you go there, is very low. it could be higher. So right now, we're looking at the spacing where it's going to be based on the core drilling and the water flow, and FERC will have some say on that as well. And then the other portion is just, the liabilities, the insurances, and all the other things that go along with having a lease and what's required by the city of Easton. So that's where we are right now. I don't think I've given too much away, but
Yeah, I
things are
mean,
moving forward.
We don't want to step in Easton's business. It's just they had the article in the paper. I saw the same thing, and I was curious myself, but thank you, Mr. Barron.
You got it.
Mr. Barron is far more optimistic sounding than Mayor Panto was in the article. so
Mr. Barron's an
I appreciate
optimistic
that.
man.
That's all I had, thank you.
Is there anything else for the Finance Committee meeting? If not, we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, Bucky, I got something to show you, man.
Stephen,
Yes,
did you ever get those percentages
percentages for,
when we talked about what people?
oh, yes, it is 3, 4, and 5 for career service. I didn't get the new contract